Before Maya could respond, the study door burst open and a teenage boy stormed in, his earlier vulnerability completely replaced with defensive anger. "I don't need a babysitter, Dad. Last night was a fluke. I miscalculated the distance, that's all. 4 times this month," Alexander countered, his voice hardening. "And last night could have killed you if Miss Chun hadn't found you. This isn't negotiable, Ethan." The teenager's glare fixed on Maya as if she were personally responsible for ruining his life. "So what? She follows me around school? My friends will think I'm being monitored like a criminal. Your friends will think she's my new executive assistant who's studying emergency medicine," Alexander replied smoothly. "Nothing unusual about that. She'll maintain professional distance in public." Ethan stormed out, slamming the door with enough force to rattle the picture frames. An uncomfortable silence settled over the room until Alexander sighed, a crack appearing in his composed facade. "There's something else you should understand," he said quietly, opening a drawer and removing a thick file. "Ethan's mother, my wife Catherine, was killed 3 years ago. A car accident that wasn't an accident. Someone targeting me got to her instead." Maya's breath caught. "Someone murdered her to hurt you?" "I'm the CEO of Thorn International, which has significant interests in technology, real estate, and venture capital," Alexander explained, his tone careful. "Not all of my business rivals play by conventional rules. Since Catherine's death, Ethan's diabetes has become increasingly unstable. Trauma and stress impact blood glucose regulation significantly." "Has he had therapy?" Maya asked, her emergency training automatically considering all factors. 5 different therapists. He won't engage with any of them." Alexander's mask of control slipped further, revealing the exhausted, grieving father beneath. "He's angry at the world and determined to prove he doesn't need help from anyone," Alexander said. A strong silence followed. Then Maya said she had to use the restroom. By the end of the day, Maya had agreed to a 3-month trial period. The decision felt surreal, like watching someone else's life unfold from a distance. Some other girl accepting this impossible opportunity. Some other girl signing paperwork in Alexander, Thorne's massive study, while Mrs. Rodriguez, the head housekeeper, stood witness with kind eyes and a knowing smile. The contract itself was surprisingly straightforward. None of the legal labyrinth Maya had expected. Her responsibilities: monitor Ethan's glucose levels, accompany him to school and activities, ensure medication compliance, respond to medical emergencies. Her compensation: a salary that made her hands shake when she read the figure. More money than she'd seen in her entire 19 years, plus room and board and funding to complete her EMT certification through an accelerated private program. "You'll start immediately," Alexander had said, his tone making it clear this wasn't a suggestion. "Mrs. Rodriguez will help you get settled today. Ethan returns from his grandmother's house this evening, and I want you established before he arrives. First impressions matter with him. He'll test you, push boundaries, try to establish dominance. Don't let him." Now, barely 6 hours later, Maya stood in the doorway of what Mrs. Rodriguez kept calling "your suite," a phrase that felt absurd in her mouth. Suite implied luxury, implied choice, implied belonging. This was all 3 and more. A bedroom larger than any apartment she'd ever lived in, with an attached bathroom that featured a soaking tub, and a small sitting area with a desk positioned beneath a window that overlooked manicured gardens she'd only seen in magazines. Her meager possessions, everything she owned fit into a single backpack, looked laughably out of place against the elegant furnishings. An extra set of clothes, mostly donated and threadbare. A toothbrush she'd gotten free from a dental clinic. A photograph of her mother, creased and faded, the only thing she'd had before foster care. The business card from last night, already feeling like an artifact from another life. That was it. The sum total of Maya Chan's material existence, scattered across a bed that probably cost more than most people earned in a month. "I know it's overwhelming, Mia," Mrs. Rodriguez said softly, moving around the room with practiced efficiency as she showed Maya where everything was. The older woman had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and an accent that spoke of origins south of the border, though her English was flawless. She moved with the quiet confidence of someone who'd worked in this house long enough to understand its rhythms, its secrets, its unspoken rules. "The closet is empty now, but Mr. Thorne has arranged for a clothing service to bring appropriate items tomorrow morning," Mrs. Rodriguez continued, opening the walk-in closet that was bigger than the cardboard box Maya had called home just days ago. Professional attire for accompanying Ethan to school, casual wear for around the house, exercise clothes for his basketball practices. Everything will be tailored to fit you properly. Maya ran her fingers along the empty hangers, each one probably worth more than her entire wardrobe had been. "This is too much," she whispered, overwhelmed by the sudden abundance, the shocking reversal from nothing to everything. I don't know how to be this person." Mrs. Rodriguez turned to face her, understanding written across her weathered features. "You don't have to be anyone except who you already are. The girl who stopped to help a stranger in the rain." She placed a gentle hand on Maya's shoulder, grounding her. "Mr. Thorne may seem cold, distant even, but everything he does is to protect Ethan. Since Mrs. Catherine died, this house has been more fortress than home. We've all felt it, the security, the suspicion, the walls he's built around his son and himself." "How did she die?" Maya asked quietly, remembering Alexander's brief mention of his wife during their morning meeting. He said it was 3 years ago, but he didn't give details. Mrs. Rodriguez's expression darkened, old grief flickering across her face. "Car accident on the interstate. Police called it mechanical failure, brake line rupture." She paused, lowering her voice even though they were alone. But Mr. Thorne never believed that. He had private investigators examine the wreckage for months. He's convinced someone tampered with her car, someone trying to hurt him by destroying what he loved most. A chill ran down Maya's spine despite the room's comfortable temperature. And they never found proof? Nothing concrete enough for criminal charges, but enough to make Mr. Thorne paranoid about security. Ethan was 12 when it happened, old enough to understand his mother was gone, but young enough to blame himself somehow. Mrs. Rodriguez moved toward the bathroom, continuing the tour while she talked. His diabetes was manageable before the accident. After, the stress, the trauma, the grief, it made everything worse. His blood sugar swings became unpredictable, dangerous. We've had 3 medical companions before you, and none of them lasted more than 2 months. Maya absorbed this information, understanding now the weight of what she'd agreed to. This wasn't just a job monitoring a teenager with diabetes. This was navigating a household built on grief and paranoia, managed by a father terrified of losing his only remaining family member, complicated by a son dealing with trauma through defiance and risk-taking. "Why didn't they last?" Maya asked, following Mrs. Rodriguez into the bathroom where fluffy towels were already stocked, along with unopened toiletries that probably cost more than she'd spent on personal care in the last year combined. "Ethan drove them away," Mrs. Rodriguez replied frankly, testing the water pressure in the sink as if to demonstrate its function. He resented the constant supervision, the reminder of his vulnerability. One quit after he deliberately skipped his insulin injection to spite her. Another left after he snuck out past security and disappeared for 6 hours. The last one, she trailed off, shaking her head. The last one made the mistake of reporting everything to Mr. Thorne, treating Ethan like a patient to be managed rather than a boy to be understood. Ethan retaliated by making her life miserable until she quit. "So I'm the 4th attempt," Maya said slowly, understanding the challenge ahead. "And he's going to test me the same way." "Without question," Mrs. Rodriguez confirmed, meeting her eyes directly. "But you have something the others didn't. You saved his life before he knew who you were, before you were hired, before there was any benefit to yourself. He knows that. It matters, even if he won't admit it." They spent the next hour going over the household routine, meal times, Ethan's school schedule, the security protocols that governed every entrance and exit, the parts of the house that were open to staff, and the areas that remained locked and off-limits. The east wing, where Maya's suite was located, housed the staff quarters and guest rooms. The main floor contained the public spaces, the study, the formal dining room, the chef's kitchen, where staff gathered, the sitting rooms that looked like they belonged in a museum. The west wing, Mrs. Rodriguez explained with careful neutrality, contained Alexander's private office, his bedroom suite, and several rooms that stayed locked at all times. "You don't go into the west wing unless specifically invited," she said firmly. "That's Mr. Thorne's space, and he values his privacy absolutely." The second floor belonged primarily to Ethan, his bedroom, a game room with equipment that probably cost more than a car, a home gym with medical monitoring equipment, and a study area where a private tutor came 3 times per week. to supplement his prep school education. He's a good student when he applies himself, Mrs. Rodriguez said with the fondness of someone who'd known him since childhood. Smart, curious, reads constantly. But since his mother died, his grades have suffered. Hard to focus on calculus when you're grieving. As the afternoon sun began its descent, painting the gardens in gold and amber light, Maya heard the rumble of a vehicle in the driveway. Her stomach clenched with nervous anticipation. Through the window she watched as a black SUV, one of the three from last night, pulled up to the front entrance. Alexander emerged first from the driver's side, moving around to open the passenger door. Ethan stepped out reluctantly, his body language screaming defiance even from this distance. He'd changed from last night's athletic wear into jeans and a hoodie, but his posture was pure teenage rebellion. Shoulders hunched, hands shoved deep in pockets, every line of his body radiating resentment. "That's your cue," Mrs. Rodriguez said quietly. "Mr. Thorne wants you waiting in the entrance hall when they come in. First impressions, remember? Show Ethan you're not intimidated, but don't challenge him directly. He needs to respect you, not fear you." Maya made her way downstairs, her heart hammering against her ribs with each step. The entrance hall was grand in a way that still made her feel like an imposter. Marble floors that reflected the light from a crystal chandelier, a curved staircase that belonged in movies, artwork on the walls that was probably worth more than most houses. She positioned herself near the base of the stairs, trying to look confident and professional rather than terrified and out of place. The front door opened, and Alexander entered first, his presence filling the space immediately. His eyes found Maya instantly, assessing her position and demeanor with that calculating gaze she was beginning to recognize. A small nod, approval, or at least acknowledgement that she'd followed instructions. Then Ethan walked in behind his father, and his eyes locked onto Maya with immediate recognition. For a split second she saw surprise flicker across his face, genuine shock that the homeless girl from the alley was standing in his house, before his expression hardened into defensive hostility. "You," he said flatly, the single word heavy with accusation and betrayal. "You're the new babysitter Dad hired?" "Medical companion," Alexander corrected sharply, moving to stand beside Maya in a gesture of support that felt both protective and possessive. "And you'll treat her with respect, Ethan. Miss Chun saved your life last night when you made catastrophically poor decisions. The least you owe her is basic courtesy." Ethan's jaw clenched, his hands curling into fists inside his hoodie pocket. "I didn't ask to be saved. I didn't ask for another person following me around, watching everything I do, reporting back to you like I'm some kind of prisoner who needs constant surveillance. You lost the right to privacy when you nearly died for the third time this month," Alexander replied, his voice cold as winter steel. "This isn't a negotiation, and it's not up for debate. Miss Chun will accompany you to school, monitor your glucose levels, and ensure you follow your treatment protocols. Those are the terms of your continued freedom. Refuse to cooperate, and we'll discuss alternative arrangements that involve considerably less independence." The threat hung in the air between them. Military school, Maya guessed, or some kind of residential treatment facility. Something Ethan clearly feared enough to make him go still, his rebellion constrained by the recognition that his father absolutely would follow through. "Fine," Ethan bit out, though his eyes when they met Maya's were full of resentment and promise. "But don't expect me to like it. And don't expect me to make this easy for you." He pushed past them both, taking the stairs two at a time with the kind of aggressive energy that spoke of rage barely contained. A door slammed somewhere on the second floor, the sound echoing through the house like a gunshot. Alexander sighed, the sound heavy with exhaustion and grief and the weight of single parenthood under impossible circumstances. "Welcome to the Thorne household, Miss Chun," he said dryly, a ghost of dark humor in his voice. "Still think you made the right decision?" Maya thought about the streets, about the cold and hunger and invisibility. She thought about the cardboard box that had been her home, the constant fear, the slow erosion of hope that came with each passing day of survival. She looked at Alexander Thorne, at the grief and determination in his eyes, and she thought about Ethan upstairs, a boy drowning in trauma and medical vulnerability, who desperately needed someone who understood both. "Ask me again in 3 months," she replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "Right now I'm exactly where I need to be, Something that might have been respect flickered across Alexander's face. "Then let's begin," he said simply, and gestured toward his study. "We have protocols to review before dinner." The first real threat came 2 months into Maya's employment, on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. She and Ethan were returning from his endocrinologist appointment when she noticed a dark sedan maintaining a precise distance behind their car through 4 consecutive turns. "Ethan," she said quietly, keeping her tone casual, "alert your father's security. We have a tail 3 cars back. Dark blue sedan, tinted windows." The teenager's eyes widened briefly before his face settled into an unsettling calm that seemed too adult for 16. "This isn't the first time," he muttered, fingers moving across his phone. "Dad has competitors who like to send messages." Within 2 minutes, 2 unmarked vehicles materialized, smoothly positioning themselves between Maya's car and the sedan. By the time they reached the mansion gates, their shadow had vanished. But the incident left Maya with a gnawing sense of unease that persisted long after they were safely inside. That evening, Maya was summoned to Alexander's study, where he sat reviewing security footage with an expression that made her stomach twist. "You identified the surveillance immediately," he observed, rewinding to show her the exact moment she'd noticed. "Most people wouldn't have. Living on the streets teaches you to notice when you're being watched," Maya replied with a shrug. "You develop instincts for danger when that's your daily reality." Alexander studied her with renewed intensity, as if seeing her fully for the first time. "The Westfield Corporation is hosting a charity benefit this Saturday. I'm attending, and I want you and Ethan to accompany me." "The Westfield Corporation?" Maya echoed, recognizing the name from the conversation she'd overheard. "Your business rivals?" A dangerous smile flickered across his face. "Officially, James Westfield and I are friendly competitors in the tech sector. Unofficially, he's been trying to discover Ethan's medical vulnerabilities for 6 months, believing it represents a weakness in my position." The full weight of what she'd become part of crashed over Maya. "You're going to use me as a shield. By bringing Ethan's medical companion openly, you show you're addressing the vulnerability while demonstrating you're not hiding it." "You understand power dynamics better than I anticipated," Alexander said approvingly. "The Westfields will be analyzing everything, including you." 4 days later, a garment box arrived for Maya, containing an evening gown in deep sapphire blue that probably cost more than she'd earned in her entire life before this job. A note in Alexander's precise handwriting read, "For Saturday. Appearances matter in their world." The Westfield estate rivaled the Thorne mansion, its modern glass architecture a sharp contrast to Alexander's traditional style. Crystal and steel everywhere, the ballroom filled with the city's elite, all performing their carefully rehearsed roles in high society's theater. Maya felt like an imposter despite the elegant gown, hyper-aware of eyes tracking her every movement as she maintained visual contact with Ethan. The teenager was unusually tense, checking his monitor more frequently than normal. James Westfield himself approached during the cocktail hour, his smile practiced and empty as he greeted Alexander with false warmth. "And who is this lovely young woman?" he asked, his gaze lingering on Maya with uncomfortable intensity. "Maya Chun, my executive assistant," Alexander replied smoothly, his hand coming to rest at the small of her back in a possessive gesture that looked natural but felt deliberate. "She's completing her EMT certification while helping manage my household operations." The evening continued its dangerous dance, every conversation layered with meanings Maya only partially understood. As dinner ended and guests mingled, she noticed Ethan's hands trembling slightly, an early warning sign she'd learned to recognize immediately. A quick glance at his monitor confirmed her concern. His glucose was dropping fast, dangerously fast. "Ethan needs air," she murmured to Alexander, keeping her expression neutral while her mind raced through protocols. "We'll step onto the terrace." They had barely made it through the glass doors when Ethan's legs buckled. Maya caught him, easing him down to the marble floor as she pulled his emergency kit from her clutch. Her hands moved automatically, glucose gel, airway check, vitals monitoring, while Alexander knelt beside them. "What happened?" he demanded, the CEO persona cracking to reveal the terrified father beneath. "Stress-induced crash," Maya explained, continuing her assessment as Ethan's color slowly improved. "His body burned through glucose faster than normal. He'll recover, but he needs rest." A shadow fell across them. Maya looked up to find James Westfield watching from the doorway, his expression calculating as he absorbed every detail before disappearing back into the party. He saw everything, Maya whispered, dread pooling in her stomach. "Get Ethan to the car," Alexander ordered, his face hardening into something cold and dangerous. "I need to have a conversation with our host." The drive home was silent except for Alexander's terse phone calls. When they arrived, he carried Ethan upstairs himself before returning to where Maya waited in the study, exhaustion written into every line of her body. "Westfield will weaponize what he saw tonight," Alexander stated, pacing like a caged animal. "He'll spread information about Ethan's condition, frame it as a critical weakness, attempt to leverage it in our business negotiations." Maya watched him move, understanding the full weight he carried. "You've spent years protecting him, haven't you? Not just from medical emergencies, but from people who would use his condition against you." "My wife died because she was perceived as my weakness," Alexander replied, his voice hollow with grief that time hadn't healed. "I won't allow that to happen to my son." Dawn was breaking when Alexander's security chief, Marcus, burst through the door. "Sir, we have a situation." Westfield's people accessed Miss Chun's last known address. "They've been questioning people in the homeless encampment where she used to stay." Ice flooded Maya's veins. "Why would they investigate me?" "Because you're connected to me now," Alexander explained grimly. "And Westfield uses anyone in my orbit as potential leverage. Your past, the people you knew, they're all vulnerable points now." The weight of her decision pressed down on Maya as she realized she'd endangered more than herself. Images of the other homeless people she'd known flashed through her mind. Tommy, who shared his sandwich when she was starving, Sarah, who'd shown her the safe places to sleep. Suddenly they were all potential targets in a war she'd never asked to join. "We have two options," Alexander said quietly. "You can leave. I'll provide enough money to finish your certification in another city, far from here. Or you stay, and I extend my protection to those you care about." Maya stared at him, understanding the manipulation even as she recognized the genuine offer beneath it. "That's not really a choice. You know, I won't abandon Ethan now." The next morning, a car arrived carrying Maya's AIM-PEG program coordinator, Professor Williams, who looked bewildered to find herself in Alexander Thorne's study. "Miss Chung, your benefactor has made an unusual request regarding your education." The unusual request restructured Maya's entire program: private tutoring, accelerated coursework, and clinical rotations at hospitals owned by Thorne subsidiaries. Professor Williams left with a dazed expression and a substantial donation check for the emergency medicine program. "You're rewriting my life," Maya observed quietly as Alexander reviewed the new schedule. "Making me dependent on your world, eliminating my exit routes. I'm offering you opportunities you'd never have otherwise," he countered. "Whether that's a gift or a cage depends on your perspective." 4 months into her employment, Maya's integration into the Thorne household was complete. Ethan had transformed from a resentful patient to something like a younger brother, his health stabilizing under her consistent care. The mansion had become home in a way nowhere else ever had. The crisis came without warning on a Thursday morning. Maya entered the kitchen to find Alexander speaking urgently into his phone, his knuckles white around the device. "They took Tommy," he said as he disconnected. "Your friend from the homeless encampment. Westfield's men are holding him at a location in the warehouse district, expecting me to send security while they make a move on Ethan here." Maya's blood turned to ice. Tommy, who'd been kind to her when she had nothing, was now bait in a trap. "We have to help him. He's completely innocent in all of this." "I know," Alexander replied, checking the weapon he'd retrieved from his desk drawer. "That's why we're going personally. Marcus will stay with Ethan." The abandoned warehouse loomed against the gray sky, its broken windows like dead eyes watching their approach. Alexander handed Maya a small device. "Emergency beacon. If anything happens to me, press this and my team will come. Get Tommy out first, no matter what." Inside was a maze of rusted machinery and rotting support beams, the air thick with decay. Alexander moved with lethal grace, signaling Maya to follow his exact path as they navigated deeper into the trap. They found Tommy tied to a chair in a small office, terrified but unharmed. As Maya rushed to free him, Alexander positioned himself at the door, weapon ready. "Go," he ordered, his voice leaving no room for argument. "I'll cover your exit." Supporting Tommy's weight, Maya hurried through the warren of corridors, the sound of gunfire erupting behind them. There were steps from the exit when a figure stepped from the shadows, James Westfield himself, a gun aimed directly at them. Time crystallized as Maya positioned herself between the weapon and Tommy, her EMT training automatically calculating angles and outcomes. She met Westfield's eyes without flinching, recognizing the moment for what it was, the final test of who she'd become. The homeless girl turned guardian. Westfield sneered. How touching. You've made yourself Thorne's newest weakness. How convenient that you've delivered yourself to me. You won't shoot me, Maya stated with certainty she didn't entirely feel. I'm worth more as leverage alive. And you won't shoot a homeless man because even in your world, there are lines you don't cross without consequences. Westfield's hesitation was brief but sufficient. Alexander appeared behind him, silent as death itself, his gun pressed to Westfield's skull. You targeted my son. You abducted an innocent man. You threatened someone under my protection, he said, each word measured and cold. Any one of these would earn my retribution. All three? That's unforgivable. The drive back to the mansion passed in silence, Tommy safely delivered to a private medical facility with security. It wasn't until they were alone in Alexander's study, both exhausted and still running on adrenaline, that Maya finally asked the question burning inside her. You could have sent your security team. It would have been the logical choice. Protect Ethan, sacrifice me and Tommy. Why risk everything? Alexander moved toward her slowly, closing the distance between them. Because you showed me that strength isn't just about power, he said, his voice rough with emotion. The night you found Ethan, you stopped for a stranger when walking away would have been easier and safer. That kind of courage. It's worth protecting. His hand cupped her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone. Stay, he whispered, the word somewhere between command and plea. Not as Ethan's medical companion, not as my employee. Stay because you've made this fortress feel like a home again. The kiss that followed felt inevitable, like the conclusion to a story that had been writing itself since that rainy night in the industrial district. When they finally pulled apart, Maya rested her forehead against his. I'm still that homeless girl who ate from dumpsters 6 months ago, she whispered. No, Alexander corrected gently. You're the woman who saved my son, who walked into danger to save a friend, who made me remember what it means to care about something beyond mere survival. That's who you are now. As dawn broke over the mansion, Maya looked out at the manicured lawns and realized her entire world had transformed. The cardboard box under the overpass seemed like a lifetime ago, replaced by a future she'd never dared to imagine, dangerous and complicated, but finally, undeniably hers. Thank you so much for following this incredible journey. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. Your support means everything and helps us continue bringing these emotional stories to life. Drop a comment below and let us know what you think happens next.